Hello, good evening, and welcome. I'm Simon Bestwick.
And I'm Gemma Files, and this, of course, is No
No
Darkness,
darkness.
but ours.
Welcome to the concluding part of our deepest dive yet into the realm of underwater horror. You'll find links to parts 1, 2, and 3 in the description below. Now, put on your scuba gear and follow us into the depths. But just go back to freshwater horror, because of course we've got the creature from the Black Lagoon. There's a classic example.
That's true. That's the creature from the Black Lagoon. The lagoon is off of the river, the South American river.
Amazon.
That's called the Black Snake, the Boya.
Okay.
Yeah. And which is supposed to be sort of haunted and sort of possessed by its own spirit because it is so dangerous and yet integral to everything in much the same way that the Mississippi is,
Yeah.
And yeah, river horror is a sort of subset of that. I don't know if you've ever seen the very brief one season found footage TV show called The River.
No.
Where they're going down that river, trying to, documentary crew, of course, because it's found footage, going down the river trying to find the father of one of the main characters who's disappeared while exploring that region. And this guy has always been obsessed with folklore and magic. And the idea is that, something magical has happened to him and therefore he's disappeared. It's actually worth your time. Kind of hard to find, I would think, unless you order it on DVD, but it's worth your time. And then, of course, there's things like the Salton Sea and the Dead Sea, both of which are, super salt, super saline.
Yes.
Areas, and have their, and combine the characteristics of a desert and a sea, and and to some degree what it's like to be in the Arctic, because there's the glare and the difficulty of living in that area. There's a rather wonderful again, a novella recently by a guy named Michael Paul Gonzalez called Beneath the Salton Sea, which posits the Salton Sea as being a bit of a landlocked Bermuda Triangle kind of place where very strange sort of impingements of time happen. And, things start to wrinkle and fold. And one moment lays over another moment. And yeah, very, very much worth your time again. There is and then of course, there are a couple of different books that I can think of offhand about, lakes that were made in order to produce hydroelectric dams.
Yeah, again, this
and the haunted towns at the bottom of them. Often haunted by people who would not leave the town before the town was flooded.
Yeah, there's a few places that's in Wales. The Capel Celyn is probably the best known one. That was submerged by a reservoir which actually supplied water to I think Liverpool and to
that makes sense,
to possibly to Birmingham as well. There were a few like that.
The background of the killer in Neil Jordan's thriller starring Annette Bening. She keeps having essentially dreams from his point of view. He turns out to be the guy who kidnapped and killed her daughter. And his background has to do with the formative trauma of being left chained to a bed as as his hometown started to be flooded.
Yeah, in Dreams, I think this is
In Dreams, yes, in Dreams, which is a movie more people should know about. You know, it's one of those moments where the same way that, you know, science fiction overlaps onto underwater horror, it's one of those moments where thriller overlaps onto horror, but it is very much a horror narrative.
Yeah.
There's like a genuinely supernatural fucking weird thing going on here. And
I need to find. I think I may have seen the opening. I remember seeing a sequence where there's like these buildings underwater and some skin.
That's it. Yeah, and Robert Downey Jr. Gives one of his weirdest performances in that.
Yeah, another film I'd love to. I think we can't possibly not mention here, and if you've not seen it, I hugely recommend it. Is the 1980s Dutch film Amsterdam, which has killer frogmen stalking the canals of Amsterdam in search of his victims.
That is amazing.
And has a speedboat chase.
There's an amazing weird tale written by a woman who didn't not write a lot of stuff, but she wrote this called The Canal, which is about a vampire on a houseboat.
Okay.
Yeah, she's like stuck on this houseboat because, you know, vampires can't cross running water. You know, so.
Oh, that reminds me a little of a similar story. There's a Hugh B. Cave story, Strigella. Two guys who've escaped a shipwreck. They come across this ship, and it's a ship that's basically been wrecked. It's basically stuck on a reef.
Yeah.
So of course the vampires are kind of stuck on board, but God help you if you're on board the ship when it gets dark, because I think one of them is saved because he's got a big cross tattooed on his chest, so they can't get at him.
That's beautiful. I love that. That is amazing. Okay, The Chill by Scott Carson is about the ghosts of a flooded village who have been undermining the hydroelectric dam.
Oh, wow. I love that.
And like literally, you know, it's like sections of the dam start to come down, you know, the other part of the valley starts to get flooded, you know, and it's because these fucking ghosts, or zombies really, I guess, you know, these you know, sort of zombies possessed by the ghosts of the people who got killed, you know, have been, you know, undermining the dam by digging with their hands from the other side.
Zombies have certainly got us. I mean, we could talk about as well. There's also I think it's Scapegoats by Clive Barker. It has that little island where there have been goats more for sacrifice, but some people went aground in it, and there are these underwater zombies. What's the other? There's another one that was.
There's another one about an island with a church on it. That if you go over there and you stay overnight, you're going to have to stay there forever.
Is that the Church on the Island, Simon Kurt Unsworth?
Yes, yeah, it's wonderful. That is an amazing story.
I think that was his first story, or something mad like that.
Yeah, I know. It was just like, fuck you.
Arsehole.
Oh my God.
Sorry, I do actually know the guy in real life. So sorry. Yeah.
No, I get it. I mean, you know, I have nothing against the dude. I like him a lot. But
how dare you, you know, with your first bloody published story?
Yeah, you know, it's like, so adding water to things just makes it super cool in a lot of ways, because there's so much inherent threat in water. So much inherent threat of, you know, water creeps, water softens, you know, water decays. It can eventually destroy, you know, let's face it, we're afraid of bogs. We're afraid of swamps, and we should be afraid of swamps. We're afraid of waterlands, you know, the idea of, you know,
And water itself can be, I mean, another film, and again, this is, I mean, it's certainly about the destructive power of water. Is an excellent little Norwegian disaster movie from the guy who made Cold Prey, called The Wave.
Yeah.
And this is based on a real thing. There was a disaster where a tsunami was caused by a landslip dropping into a fjord, and it basically launched this wall of water which absolutely devastated the town across the lake. And the people in this town, and so there is actually this whole thing where in the film where there was this town and they've got like a warning system to detect movement, and suddenly realizes something happens, and there's a moment when the alarms go off. And people look at each other and go, 10 minutes. They've got 10 minutes before the wave hits. And it is absolutely enthralling.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, it's Roar Uthag.
Yeah.
The wonderfully named Roar Uthag.
Yes.
Who specializes in, this could actually happen, right? It's not so great. You could get stuck in a tunnel. You could, there could be a tsunami in the fjord. There could be,
yeah, I mean,
the sea could catch on fire, because there would be like a huge, a huge oil spill, and then something else would happen.
Yeah,
none of this would be good.
Cold Prey was brilliant. Escape, another film he did with again with Ingrid Bergdahl, is a super. I mean, less horror than a really excellent kind of medieval set.
Vikings.
Thriller.
Yes. And sort of hillbilly Vikings who need somebody to breed with.
Yes, and then you've got The Wave. I mean, he has a knack of making quite ordinary, likable characters very interesting.
Yes.
Which is something that's unique, which can be a problem. I mean, one of the things I loved about Cold Prey, which is taking a bit of a detour, obviously, from the subject matter, was the fact that you've got a bunch of, and we're so used to seeing, we've got a bunch of young people. They're going to get the kid off and have sex, and someone's going to hack them up with a weapon. And in fact, there is very little. There isn't any sex. But they're a bunch of genuinely good people, and even the guy who's like the fifth wheel, and who's got like the unrequited crush on the main female character. We'd be so used to in an American film to, that being something that turned pernicious. He tried to he would act selfishly because of that, try and rape her or try and get her boyfriend killed, so eliminate competition. And he doesn't. If anything, he actually acts. He behaves bravely and decently, and actually dies buying time for her.
Absolutely, and
that's about the film. I love that it, again, because out of all those people, I would tend to identify more with that fifth wheel character, because that's so often been me in those kind of social situations with friends when I was younger. So it's nice when you see somebody who's so like that, who isn't portrayed to be pathetic or ridiculous or a baddie, then it's kind of like, oh wow, I like this guy.
So you're perfectly correct. He always does that, and it's heart-wrenching. All of these ostensible thrillers that we've just talked about have that quality of it's watching likable humans that you bond with very quickly be put under terrible pressurized.
I mean, The Wave as it is The Wave is probably more disaster. It's basically a disaster movie. But I think it's got it has enough. There are enough elements of it, and especially with Orthag's previous sort of track record, for us to sort of certainly put it under the horror umbrella here a bit.
I think that all disaster movies have an aspect of horror. Because much like a slasher, either the people are sketched really quickly and annoyingly, and you're like, oh, thank God that guy's dead, and that guy, and that guy, and that guy, and that guy, or it's like, fuck, I wouldn't want to be in that situation. Oh, another thing that I can't believe we haven't talked about so far, but probably because most people see it as a science fiction movie rather than a horror movie necessarily, is underwater, completely, it's survival, but there's a huge element of horror in it. It is very much like, what if we drilled too deep, too greedily and deeply, and we broke into Yahanathle, and eventually Cthulhu came out of the crack, which immediately reminds me of Cloverfield. Since the giant monster has smaller monsters living on him like lice that fall off of him. So what's that? A horrible thing. What's that? Another thing, also horrible.
I now want to see a fan footage like that with you narrating it. So what's that? It's a horrible thing. What's that?
That's actually a line from Cloverfield. It's actually a line from the guy behind the camera. This woman who's running alongside of him is like, "What's that? A horrible thing. What's that? Another thing, also horrible."
Oh, he actually says that's actually from the film.
That is an actual line from Cloverfield. And
that is brilliant. That is actually. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Dead Heat with Treat Williams.
Yes.
So there is a bit where where one of them is being attacked by this kind of like gigantic zombie thing, and Treat Williams goes, "What is this thing?" And Joe Piscopo goes, "Very ugly."
Yeah, exactly.
With his arm wrapped around his throat, kind of thing.
But most people think of this movie as a science fiction movie rather than a horror film, but it has a huge amount of horror in it. And that movie, of course, is The Abyss by James Cameron.
Yes, I did wonder if we should talk about this, because obviously,
the same way that you would talk about Leviathan or Deep Star 6, both of which are essentially the thing on the floor of the ocean.
Yeah, they came out around the same time, and everything. The Abyss was seen more as a horror film and more as a kind of
it's sort of his Spielbergian kind of, it's like, and then we met these wonderful creatures from under the sea, and they looked like angels, and they could make technology out of water and shit like that. And I'm like, sorry, did you forget about how awful it is to die in a crack at the bottom of the sea while, typing "goodbye wife" on a computer inside your glove, or the fact that you have to escape from something by letting your wife drown on the possibility that you might be able to resurrect her at the other end.
It's been a very long time since I've seen much of I've ever seen it all the way through.
It's a very long film. Again, it was, it's like this was where he really started to get into the thing where it's like, nobody can tell me to cut. It's like if I want to make a 3-hour fucking film, I will make that 3-hour fucking film. It's like, you can't stop me. It's like, and people in Hollywood were like, well, people are still paying to see this film. So I guess, no, we can't stop you. If you want to make 3 documentaries about the Titanic, where, you yourself go down to the Titanic and shoot inside the Titanic.
That's another sea horror film, isn't it?
Yes, that's a definite sea horror film.
The ultimate of music by Celine Dion.
Oh no.
I'm being mean.
No, I always think of Britney Spears when I see that film now. It's like, yeah. But I thought the old lady dropped it into the ocean at the end. Well, I went down and I got it for you, baby. Oh, you shouldn't have. Oops, I did it again. But yeah, the Abyss has so many aspects to it, which are survival horror at the bottom of the sea. And, up to and including, getting nitrogen narcosis, where you start to go insane because you sort of, you've still got nitrogen inside of your body, and it's not quite the bends. But it's worse because you've got a suitcase bomb, you know.
Yeah, the bend is what you get when you come up. The narcosis is what you got when you're down there, and it's all dissolving. As I said, the phrase "rapture of the deep" has been used, I think, for it.
That's right. Yeah, that thing where you're like, "Hey, here I am at the bottom of the sea. Everything's great. Everything's great." You know, and in this particular case, no, it's Michael Biehn with a suitcase bomb. It's like, we're gonna have to blow these things up.
Like nuke it from you're supposed to nuke it from orbit.
Orbit. You're supposed to nuke it like there, like right next to us. It's like, I'm willing to die. Why aren't you willing to die for your country?
Because I'm not insane, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
The obvious response.
Yeah, there are large sections of the Abyss which are straight up a horror movie, and it's all about the choices that you have to make, much like the choices that you have to make in space. You know, the choices that you have to make sure that somebody's gonna make it out alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it just gets worse and worse as the thing goes on, because it's like, well, if you nuke the people at the bottom of the ocean, maybe they're going to come up and kill us all. You don't know.
There's very good. Thinking of some of the.
These people have technology made out of water, and the entire Earth is covered in water. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Get this one through, dude. You know,
yeah,
they have some pretty powerful resources they can deploy here.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to make a choice between Deep Star 6 and Leviathan, I would go with Leviathan every time.
That's the one where it's kind of like there's something in the vodka that makes people start.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Meld
start
together.
To mutate, but it is genuinely, the gore is top shelf.
Okay.
The gore is top shelf, and the team is really good. Everybody's just trying to be the thing. You can't all be the thing. It can't be done. But Peter Weller is a pretty good Kurt Russell.
Cool.
You know what I mean?
I think there was another one. Was it Deep Rising? Was that Treat Williams again? I think I've not seen
Deep Rising was made by Stephen Sommers, the same guy who made The Mummy and The Mummy Returns, and it is, as usual, pulpy, so pulpy. It's kind of like the Poseidon Adventure with a horrible, immortal kaiju-sized thing with thousands and thousands of tentacles that come up through that come up through your pipes and melt you down and make you live forever in its stomach. So it's sort of like the Poseidon Adventure if you're being attacked by Cthulhu.
Excellent. This definitely sounds like one to track down. Yeah. I seem to remember an 80s film from Medusa home video called Devouring Waves, which I think I can't quite remember what the monster was in that. Oh, and of course we have to mention Sharknado.
Sharknado. The Last Wave by Peter Weir.
Oh God, yeah. That
deserves its own breakdown. That's incredible. And definitely is there. You know, I mean, I would like to talk about Australian horror at some point, and
there's a lot of really interesting
Australian Antipodean horror.
Films like Colin Eggleston's Long Weekend and Cassandra, which is less talked about, but I think is a really good little movie.
Yeah, there's The Dreaming. Yeah. There's a lot of really interesting post-colonial horror that comes out of Australia, as should be, you know. Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to there is I think AMC has backed a thing about Aboriginal vampire killers.
Okay.
Going up against white colonial vampires in Australia.
Oh yes, this sounds good.
Yes.
This sounds good.
Yeah. Let's face it, Rabbit Proof Fence is a bit of a horror movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like being pursued through the deep dead red heart of Australia. You know, going along the rabbit proof fence, trying to get home, being pursued by somebody from your own tribe and Kenneth Branagh, who wants to make you into essentially maids.
Dear God. And we talk about the Nightingale as well. Is that Australian?
Oh yes, the Nightingale is actually Tasmania. But
as I say, we sat down to watch that with Kate, and she basically noped out around the infanticide, and so we sat there watching it. But Kate was basically okay. I'm just looking at my phone here. I'm on Instagram.
One of my ancestors went through the female factory, so it has a certain punch for me.
Yeah. I thought it was a brilliant film.
It's an incredible film.
For some people, it's
a lot.
I
totally understand why it's too much for some people, but it is, it's sold so often as a rape revenge film, but what it's really about is how revenge kills everybody. Revenge is digging two graves. Revenge is, it is a deforming thing. It's like to fight evil with evil is a deforming thing.
Yeah. But unfortunately sometimes necessary as well, because
absolutely.
If you just go, no, I'm not going to descend to your level, I will walk away. Well, I think the way that she treats it is much better, which is the thing of, I am going to name you and shame you to your face in front of your commanding officer, and now you can do whatever you want. Because you are never going to get any higher up the chain than you are right now. Yeah, because even by the standards,
everybody fucking knows that there's something fucking wrong with you.
Even by the standards of his kind of his own milieu, he's kind of there may be an awful lot of stuff that goes like that goes on, but you don't want to get caught. But getting caught,
exactly. You definitely don't want some woman coming up to you and singing Irish folk songs in your face.
It's rarely a good sign when that happens.
My baby, you also killed my husband, and you stole an Aboriginal lady and got her raped and murdered.
So have we? I keep thinking there's more kind of water-based horror we should be talking. I'm tempted to kind of cite Ellen Datlow's anthology, The Devil and the Deep.
Sure.
Just obviously there's a small problem of I'm in that one, so I don't.
I'm not, but it's like I think that of the making of horror based around the sea, there is no end. And based around water, there is no end. But I think that we've called out a pretty substantial bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah.
There's always room for more, and there's always there's always stuff that you forget about as well. Something I forgot about is yet another U-boat narrative by F.R. Tallis, the same guy who did the voices and what's his other one called? The Forbidden, The Sleep Room, and The Voices. F.R. Tallis is a bit Jonathan A. Cliffy and a bit F.G. Cotomy. And
does Frank Tallis, he also writes the Vienna Blood series of
I believe so. Yes.
crime novels.
Yes. Absolutely. That is who he is. And all of his horror is worth taking a look at. But I find The Passenger really interesting because it's you keep expecting that it's going to turn into a couple of different types of, undersea horror film, or undersea horror narrative rather, and it's actually doing something far more subtle. It's about it's about what happens because you're ferrying someone from one place to another, and that person is the problem. That person is so it's a bit like the myth of the Jonah.
I was just thinking that sounds
with runic magic attached to it.
Okay, I'm sold.
And Anenerba kind of shit going on in the background, which always does it for me. Anytime you can bring in the Anenerba, I'm happy. Weird Nazi occultism. Yeah, show me more.
Subject for fiction.
Oh, fuck yes. We could do a whole thing on Nazi occultism.
Oh yes. There's a whole bunch of stuff we need to do.
Speaking of which, what's the thing with Peter Cushing and the underwater Nazi zombies?
Shockwaves. Yes, of course. Yes. Can't believe you forgot.
Yeah. Shockwaves. Where you have underwater Nazi zombies coming up out of the water onto the shore of this island where they were created.
Yes.
And then
coming home.
Yeah, coming home.
That's, oh my god, there is just so much cool stuff to talk about. So yeah, I'm sure anyone listening to this, I'm sure there's probably you're probably already thinking of a book or a story or a film or TV series that you're thinking, and you're there like, why the hell haven't they mentioned that? Well, if that's the case, please let us know in the comments, because I'm sure we'll. Yes. If we at some point we may well return to this topic, and some. There
were three separate TV shows that only came out for one season each, which were essentially about aliens coming up out of the sea. And I have all of them on DVD.
Excellent.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into it, but yeah, it was in the early to mid 1990s. And one of them starred Carla, not Buono. And Peter Dinklage. One of them starred Peter Dinklage.
There we go. Yes. There we go. So there you have it.
Yeah.
No Darkness But Ours is made possible through generous donations from horror enthusiasts just like you. If you'd like to support us, you can sign up to our Patreon and get access to exclusive content, or you can make a one-off donation via Ko-Fi. Links in the description below. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know in the comments, share and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the like button if you're watching us on YouTube. Let us know as well if there's anything you'd really like to hear us talking about in the future, and we'll be back with more at the same time next week.
We will be back, of course, next week to lower the tone of the conversation once again.
Yes.
So, until next time, I have been Simon Bestwick.
And I have been, as usual, Gemma Files, and this remains No Darkness But Ours.
Glug, glug, glug.
Glug, 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 glug.